Unbelievable.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to The Collective. We have another fantastic show for you planned out today. Very excited to have Matt returning once again. Always good to have you on here, Matt. Now, while I am excited, y'all should be too. Hit your buttons, the like buttons, the subscribe buttons, hit the notification bell, do all that good stuff. Get your emails whenever we go live, which is, of course, every day for another 7 days. Dun, dun, dun. We got a week left of daily stuff. We're going to be talking about safe space today, and I can feel the disdain in Sean's eyes right now. So this is going to be a good one. But before we get into that, Matt, quick little blurb: who you are, where you come from, all that good stuff, and then we'll carry on.
So ex-military combat engineer, Canadian Armed Forces, and now just going through life, becoming a chef, health coach, other things. And yeah, there you go, 10 seconds.
All that good stuff. I like it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, before I get too deep into this, I do want to mention if anybody has any thoughts, questions, comments at all, by all means, put them up in the comment section like this one right here. Lisa, Merry Christmas, everyone. Merry Christmas Eve, everyone. Winterstorm, good afternoon, team. Salty's in here, good afternoon, all. And Daniel's in here. Merry Christmas, Lisa, Jensen, Collective Family. May tonight's festivities treat you well. Fantastic. It is going to be a good one. We are going to be talking safe space today. So I looked up a definition and then we'll talk about it. The definition that I found was safe spaces can exist in various settings such as schools, workplaces, community centers, or online platforms. They aim to create a sense of inclusivity and allow people to share their thoughts, experiences, and feelings without facing negative consequences. These spaces are particularly important for individuals who may face discrimination based on their race, gender, sexual orientation, religion, disability, or other aspects of their identity. It is essential to note that the concept of safe space can be subjective, and what feels safe for one person may not be the same for another. Some argue that safe spaces are necessary for promoting diversity and inclusion, while others express concerns about potential limitations on free speech. The balance between creating a supportive environment and allowing for diverse perspectives is an ongoing and nuanced discussion in many societal contexts. So, with that stated, Matt, what are your first thoughts?
Can I defer to Sean on this one right off the bat? I don't know. Safe spaces do have a place, I believe, right? I've don't really use one. I've kind of had to have people use one, but it's a tool. That's all it is. It's a tool to understand what's going on, to take a pause. I think we talked about that a couple of weeks ago about taking that tactical pause, stepping back and breathing. That's all a safe space is literally just putting yourself into a position where you can start thinking again. It's not a place to cry. It's not a place to, ooh, woo is me, look at me, I need a safe space. It's a tool to assess the situation you're in and process and move forward from there.
Interesting. Sean, first thoughts?
My first thoughts are your definitions are getting longer and longer at the start of each show. And so I feel like I need a safe space after that definition that you just described. And so I think Matt's correct in the sense that they probably have their space in society. And I'm not one who uses them. And I think that they're misused mostly. And I believe that if safe space could be retitled something along the lines of, I don't know, I haven't thought of it. This is off the cuff here. If it could be changed from safe space title to sit down and think title, because I think they're misused. I think they're a way to skive out of work. Like you go hang out in your safe space and you don't do anything. So now you want a game. So you take your phone down to the safe space with you. Now you're on the game. And it's a way to duck reality to some degree. Now, does that sound super harsh? Yeah, that probably wasn't in Chance Burles' definition. It almost was. It was so freaking long, though. I think that when I consider safe space, it should be a spot that someone goes to where they get to work on why they're uncomfortable. And that is the key, is whether someone works on why they're uncomfortable or not. Because if it's a safe space where you just go to shirk your responsibilities, then all you're doing is just dogging it for 15 or 20 minutes or 30 minutes or however long you hang out in the safe space. You get nothing done. You probably get distracted by your game on your phone. And so it's a shirk space rather than a think about it space. So as I was listening to the extra long definition today at the start of the show, I was like, oh, this is taking too long. But I'm hanging out not in my safe space. I'm hanging out in my office, listening to the entire definition, wondering why I think it's too long, and processing what's going on. I'm not running off to a safe space to not process it, the shirk space. And so that's my first thought is whenever something becomes uncomfortable, primarily in North America, because I haven't seen safe spaces anywhere else. When it gets uncomfortable over here, someone's given like raises a white flag, runs down to a spot and shirk spaces it rather than hangs out in the moment and processes it, the process space that they really need. There you go.
Yeah, I like it. I figured that's where we were go with this, but the question I really had in any context of this is that is it actually safe? And to your point, Shaun, that like to run off into a shirk space or to remove yourself from whatever position of uncomfortability is you're trying to physically create a safer area for yourself to then either process or shirk or get away, but it is a physical representation of you want where you are right now to be less uncomfortable. And I think that and I'm wondering, do you think that there is actually ever such a thing as a safe space? Is there ever a space that is actually 100% safe? Matt, what do you think?
No, because you take your demons with you for the most part. So if you go into your safe space with your anxiety or your problem, not even processing, and it's just running around in your brain, it's still going to run around in your brain in the safe space, right? It goes back to that whole fight, flight, the other F, right? And it's the flight thing. That's all it is. You're not fighting the problem. You're not engaging with the solution. You're just fleeing from the problem and taking it with you. And unless you go into your safe space to actually process it, to actually use it as a tool, again, it's just like Shaun says, get on your game and, Pokemon it up, because that's all you're doing. You're just getting out of work and getting out of learning, developing, growing, evolving yourself. You're just blah, right? There is no safe space. It's a place to work on to make things better, so you don't have to use a safe place.
Indeed. Shaun, what do you think?
Yeah, when I think of a reason why a person might need a safe space, it's probably something along the lines of whatever it is in front of them in their office or at school or whatever the case is, it's got them all worked up. Like so worked up where they need a timeout. And so, that timeout, what happens in the safe space? What changes? Well, what probably changes is the bandwidth all around them, the white noise, the sizzle of the moment that was messing with their head. Well, it all became too much. And so now they need to get into a spot where there's less bandwidth all around them. There's less white noise so that they can just take a moment. So at what point in the shirk space routine, which could turn into every single day for the rest of your life, at what point does someone interject and say, hey, have you ever heard of this thing called box breathing? Instead of panicking and running down to the safe space and zoning out and disconnecting from the world all around you, how about just try some box breathing? You can actually do box breathing in your cubicle. You can do box breathing in your classroom. You can do box breathing right where you're standing rather than hustling down to a safe space. Have you ever thought about box breathing? Okay, if you've never heard of box breathing, have you ever heard about getting in touch with the moment? Have you ever felt the tips of your fingers? Have you ever felt your feet on the floor? Have you ever felt that pencil that you're twizzling in your fingers? Have you considered just for a moment, like really connecting with the now? Have you ever thought about things that are tools that you can use where you're at, rather than creating a artificial construct called a safe space, which never existed until not too long ago, just recently. It's a recent phenomenon. Safe spaces never existed from caveman time all the way up until like this modern phenomenon of somehow people have got to rush off to a sterile environment where they're patted and coddled and soothed by the silence or the disconnect from the world around them, because they haven't found a way to interconnect within the world around them. And so I understand that there's people perhaps on the spectrum that a lot of bandwidth, a lot of noise, a lot of lights, a lot of things start becoming overwhelming. Well, that's outlier stuff. That's 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 a tiny, almost infinitesimally small portion of the population that needs to get away from a lot of noise and a lot of light. It's called outliers. It's not called the general population. The general population, in my mind, absolutely doesn't need a thing called a safe space. What the general population absolutely needs is tools to manage the moment, like everyone did before safe spaces existed. And so, have we become more and more disconnected as the decades go by, so that we absolutely need a warm blanket and a warm glass of milk every time we get a little upset? Have we become that disconnected from these tools that enable us to process the moment? Or has it been proposed that safe spaces are the only way to manage when you feel a little bit of anxiety, and you can hit the big red button, eject out of your cubicle, and rush straight down to the shirk space? I mean, the safe space. And so I believe that it's probably the latter, that the message has been created that in order to process a little bit of tension, a little bit of friction, a little bit of adversity, a little bit of uncomfortableness, you just hit the big red button and hustle straight down to the safe space, where you don't have to deal with the things that used to be dealt with in the past, but now are not. And maybe it's nobody's fault other than the tools that enable us to deal with these moments are not being discussed openly enough in these environments where safe spaces are being created. So I don't even know where safe spaces hang out. Maybe in office buildings, maybe in schools, maybe in hospitals. Maybe I know there was one in an airport, because I did a live chat podcast from a safe space in an airport, which was wild. And so it was really quiet though, so it was handy. And so these safe spaces, wherever they exist, I feel that they probably aren't required. What could be better used is the money that was somehow magically appeared to create the safe space could have been put into educating the company or the school kids or the airport customers about how to manage the now, how to manage tension, how to manage anxiety, how to manage today's daily pressures with billboards or with videos or with posters or with newsletters or with just generally hanging out and being cool by the water cooler and talking about these things through internal conversations. So I safe spaces weren't needed 20 years ago. I don't feel they're needed now. I think they could be replaced by just some good common sense and some pro tips on how to breathe properly, how to be in touch with your body, how to just process the world a little bit better.
Yeah, I agree. One of the reasons why I wanted to talk about it today specifically was the fact that it is it's something that's kind of been accepted that it's happening. And I'm wondering, do you think that this has been brought from an outlier position into the forefront of the general population? Because as you said, for someone that is truly experiencing an overwhelming situation due to some sort of neurological disorder, that it seems reasonable to have them be able to go somewhere and remove themselves so that they can then regulate their own physiology. But do you think that maybe perhaps somebody else saw that and said, "Man, that looks awesome. I would love a place to go and regulate my thing," and then just slowly, it's crept forward into the forefront of our society now? Matt, what do you think?
Yeah, no, I totally think that it got abused 100%. And Sean's right, and it's the outlier, the very minuscule percentage that requires a safe space. But it's not to be confused with just taking a moment too, as well, to go defrag or just get away from a situation. I know that working on the kitchen line, right? There's a lot of times when your plates are coming out like garbage, service is not doing these things. You got customers coming in complaining and stuff like that. You need to go cry in the walk-in, right? So you go into the walk-in, you punch a side of beef, you come back out and you continue your job, right? But you take that moment just to kind of bring that stress level down. But that's not shirking the job. You literally, I've seen people who literally just go, I'm gonna go prep for like 5 minutes and just get away from the line. But I think it gets abused by other people who see this as well. It's like, oh, well, he took off for like 5 minutes. He's in a high stress, situation. He needs to go away. So do I. I'm literally flipping a pan. I got to go take my moment, right? And I think that it has been the narrative over the last little bit that take your safe space moment, take your your positive mental moments, so you're not too much anxiety or too stressed. I'm using my official deep voice here. But I think that Sean's right too, is that the skills are lost to deal with stress and anxiety, and it's not practiced, as in you have to be in, I want to say this, have to be in the fight to learn to be able to fight, right? You can't just sit in your safe space and like, well, the next time I get stressed. No, you kind of have to be in it, and you have to keep on pushing through. Sure, take your moments to de-stress and defrag, but get back into the fight. Don't just sit there in the corner and just like go woo-hoo, poor me.
Yeah.
And don't, yeah, and other people shouldn't be abusing that too. If someone who does really need it, like gets overwhelmed, overstimulated, and it's a medical condition, an outlier condition, other people shouldn't abuse it. And it's actually very disappointing to see. I'm going to use the school I'm at. We do have safe space. We do have quiet areas and stuff like that too as well. And people do abuse it just to get out of class, or oh, I got an 80 instead of a 90. Ooh, I gotta like go defrag. Hit the books harder. Fight through it, right? I totally think that the narrative is being corrupted for the use of these skills, and it's the simple, easy way out. Go take a time out versus learn to deal with it.
Yeah, 100%. Shaun, thoughts on this?
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, it's a messaging issue now at this point. Things are in place, safe spaces are in place, and that Pandora's box was opened. But now it's the messaging is continuous in the sense of, just take that positive mental break. And I dig that message, except that finger then points at and go and be pampered in your safe room, in your safe space, in your place where you don't have to deal with the world. It's that next logical leap that I feel is the nefarious problem. It's corrosive because the message of the safe space could be changed so that it isn't, well, now you just tap out. Bro, just tap out and go game. Tap out on the problem. It sends out a message, a distilled message of you get to tap out whenever you want. And that's okay on the BJJ mats, but out in the cubicle or in the school room or in the wherever safe spaces exist, you can't just like tap out on the constant whenever you feel a little bit uncomfortable, because there's actually people relying on you all around you in that moment, whether it's a work deadline, a cubicle deadline, whether it's a school project where your partner's relying on you, or the teacher was about to ask you that question that was about to change the entire fabric of society because it sparked an idea in your head, and all of a sudden you just solved whatever, cancer or eternal energy. I mean, all of these opportunities that are bailed on down to the safe room, they're never discussed, they're never considered. It's a one-way proposition of, I just need a time out. I'm going to go take my safe space. Well, while you're doing that, all of these opportunities are lost opportunities that someone else has to pick up the slack on. Your classmates, as an example, with a school project, have to pick up that slack, or your cubicle mates have to pick up that work. And so by shirking your responsibilities in the moment, you're adding burden to those around you. And that's never discussed, that's never considered. That teamwork impact is something that is not addressed in the safe space environment. It's kind of like a little selfish moment as far as I'm concerned. Now, if it's legit, again, if it's an outlier situation, or you're having a full tilt panic attack, like full tilt, like where it's almost like intervention required, but you just get in front of it and you get down to a safe space, and you feel safe and you start relaxing. That's a good use of a safe space. But long before you ever had to enter into a panic moment and start through a tiny little white tunnel because your vision is collapsing because you're that panicking, you have to panic your way down to a safe space to relax. Long before that, at what point did box breathing ever come into the conversation? At what point did ... all of the things that could have been put in place through a program in-house that taught everyone how to manage these moments before they become moments? And so instead of having those skills in place, there's a $100,000 room in place to be used for gaming or shirking. And then the one time per year or the 10 times per year, an outlier moment occurs where someone actually has a panic attack and they need a moment to chillax. And so without a designated structure called a safe space, I think long before noise canceling headphones occurred, people managed to not have a safe space. But now a safe space is like active noise cancellation headphones. If you need a moment, throw on your headphones, stick on a sign on your cubicle wall and says something along the lines of, don't hassle me for the next 5 minutes, or whatever you need to write on the piece of paper that gets stuck on the cubicle entrance. Just give me a moment. Do not bother me for the next 10 minutes, whatever it takes. And then enter into box breathing, and then start getting in touch with your body. Then start processing why you feel that way. Slow down your CNS, your central nervous system. There's lots of things that can be done before one brick gets put into the safe space to build it. But I don't think those things are often put in place within various organizations. And I think the reason for that is because the conversation's uncomfortable. Why does anyone need to go down to a safe space? Because my teacher's a jerk. Oh, okay, let's build a safe space. Let's not talk about the teacher. Let's not talk about why things are jerky right now. Let's grab some more bricks. So I think that it's a way to like duck, dodge, and dive some of the fundamental issues that are occurring in a school or in a workplace or in a wherever they exist. I think it's a way to kind of create a check on the checklist of, we're doing things for you to make it easier for you. But it's, in my world, it's actually just making things more complicated or more shirky, difficult.
I think you're right that it's a Band-Aid at best, right? It's something to cover the actual injury without dealing with it. And I want to get your guys' thoughts on this, because my epiphany that I had a little bit earlier is that if no space is technically safe, then that means you have to accept risk in all and any movement. So to accept that risk, to accept the fact that there is danger in anything you do, that allows you to create tools to manage said danger, right? You can plan for it, you can set it up, you can learn how to box breathe, you can understand what your triggers are so that you can engage them faster, so you can manage them and mitigate those reactions sooner, rather than having to wait until you have a full-blown attack and have to run away. So I think that I wanted to get your guys' thoughts on, do you think that it really is, at least in my mind, the acceptance of risk? Or do you think that there's something else in play that would allow people to have these conversations? And again, the reason why I wanted to have a conversation is because nobody talks about it, right? And so that's why I brought it up. What do you guys think on the acceptance of risk, Matt?
Before I say that, I'm just going to go back to your Band-Aid point too as well. Yeah, it is a Band-Aid, but it's the safe space, the way it's being pushed right now, is like putting a cast on a scratch. Like you go from not even just like repairing it to like full on, let's lock her down, right? Like, holy cow, you got an arm, don't move it, right? But as for acceptance of risk, yeah, that is I think is a big factor. And I think that's what a lot of people have lost. Not the acceptance of risk per se, the acceptance of potential failure, I think, is the more strong motivator for this whole safe space thing. I've witnessed a lot of people going through school and working at the school and other places where when it became a moment of potential failure, they would lock down. They would like, oh, this is garbage squad, I gotta walk away, I'm gonna cry, or I failed the class and I have to redo it, I'm useless at this trade, I can't do it, right? They haven't even engaged in it. They haven't even really pushed beyond that internal dialogue that potentially there is a risk, potentially there is a failure, potentially there is harm. They haven't even gone past the internal dialogue to actually engage into it, to plan forward to make it a success, or to learn from said failure and repeat it and then actually be that all-star that you need to be for what you're going for. The instant something gets stressful, the instant something pushes back is when people start crumbling, and they don't even push through that or go through and learn what they need to learn. Box breathing, 2-breath breathing, whatever techniques you got to do, mindfulness, right? They focus on the potential failure and they get locked in that moment in their head, not actually in reality.
Yeah, 100%. Shaun, thoughts?
Yeah, I've seen it as well myself, and I agree with Matt. And so, instead of building a safe space, put a budget aside to hire a consultant that can come in and speak about resilience, or speak about, hey, if you start experiencing these symptoms, if you start feeling your heart racing a little bit, if you start sweating a little bit, if your vision starts adjusting, if you start feeling a little shaky, if you start all of the things that would be demonstrating that someone is elevated, these kind of conversations need to occur like in the open, like in an auditorium or in a classroom, from behind a podium to 100, 200, 300 kids in school. There's people out there that don't even know what's going on in their body. They don't understand that a racing heart means X, and sweat trickling down the back of their neck means Y, and their vision being a bit funky means Z. They just don't understand that some of these physiological markers, these elevated markers, indicate something. It could be their normative way of living. They walk into a classroom, they sit down, the professor that they don't like walks out onto the stage, clears his throat, and all of a sudden they're sweating. All of a sudden their heart's racing. And they haven't put 2 and 2 together because they've never heard it from anyone. They've never read it in a book. Movies don't talk about it. Certainly Netflix doesn't. And so where did they learn these things? Where did they learn what's going on with this fight and flight syndrome? Maybe they've never even heard that. And so they're existing with the absence of knowledge in this area. They just know that when that dude walks out and clears his throat, they feel off. And that off doesn't have anything more than they just feel off. And so as that compounds on itself, now they're sweating and panicking as they walk into the auditorium. They don't even have to have the guy clear his throat because now it's all building on itself. It's all the anticipation. It's all the anxiety of the future because they don't have the tools to deal with anxiety. They're living so much in the future. They don't understand how to live in the present. That panic attack is building now when they get out of bed and start thinking about, oh, I've got to go to the auditorium. Now they can't get out of their house. And they don't understand why, because these kind of conversations aren't occurring. They don't understand that there's nothing wrong with you. This is just how the body works if you don't address the issue. The things that you're experiencing are things that are normal based on you've let them become normal. The abnormal has become the normal. And you're not a bad person for it. It's not like, you need to be punished because you let this happen. What needs to be punished is society as a whole for not telling you that this is normal if you let it become normal. The reason you can't leave your house is because you weren't informed. Well, that's what we're doing over here. We're trying to inform. We're trying to put the word out that if you're starting to sweat and panic and feel the need for a safe space as you're walking towards that auditorium, there's a reason. And there's solutions. Do we need safe spaces? I don't believe so. What I think we need is more conversation about how we don't need safe spaces. What we need is tools in front of safe spaces and conversations like this, not on a tiny scale, but on a much larger scale so that people can understand that don't sweat it. But literally we're talking about sweating because of anxiety. But really don't sweat it. Don't sweat how you're feeling this moment that is making you uncomfortable. That's normal. Everyone feels it. It's the tools to move through the moment. It's the process to engage in why you feel uncomfortable and move through that uncomfortableness so that you can gain a little bit more resilience. You can face a little bit more adversity. That 80% that you got on your test is a non-factor because you see the long game rather than what's directly in front of your nose that's making you feel anxiety. All of the world around you, the external world, can be rejigged, can be remanufactured, not externally, but in your mind, reconstructed in a way that safe spaces aren't needed. But that takes some work. That takes some work individually, and that takes some work as a society to be able to kind of put the word out that there's a better way to do life, and most of it is mindset based.
Yeah, 100%. We got a couple comments here from Salty I just want to touch on because I think they're great. He jumps in here earlier and he said, I think he's talking about safe spaces as a whole. He says, I think it's an illusion created by poor communication skills and has been misused in general. There's a difference between a tactical pause and move or break in discussion. Its only reason is to allow emotions to dissipate, and it neglects the need to further communication because one or more members is uncomfortable with a difference of opinion or challenge, which I absolutely love. He also points out it doesn't allow those involved to grow through uncomfortable, controlled discussion, which I think is the key in that for sure. I think now I'm going to come back to you guys on this one, is the fact that there's been a resurgence of kind of enforced responsibility in the last little while, especially for young men. You see it online all the time. The guys yelling at the microphone. You got the selection processes that are going on from, former SEALs or former whatever fancy dudes coming down and running like a mini selection or a mini buds or a mini whatever to impose this kind of personal responsibility on people. And in order to get them to try to take their own responsibility, obviously, right? It's not a long-term thing, but I'm wondering, do you guys think that the fact that we haven't talked about this kind of stuff for so long, that we've allowed, not so much allowed, but, these things have taken hold, this whole safe spaces and lack of responsibility, not understanding of their own risk and so on and so forth, have now left this almost power vacuum for people to come in and be like, now we're going to take responsibility again, and get this yelling into the microphone kind of persons out in the world. Matt, what do you think?
I think, yeah, there is a resurgence of it. And I think like we're already a generation into this, I'm going to call it weakness, but it is literally to have in that moment, that safe space, that lack of responsibility, that lack of drive, the lack of will of fight, right? I think we are seeing a resurgence, not only just from an older generation trying to reteach a younger generation, but also that younger generation realizing that's not the way forward. That's not the way to grow and develop. That being stuck and stagnant is not a developmental for the personal being, or even the culture and the human species as a whole, right? To sit back and say, oh, I'm not going to challenge myself, or oh, that's dangerous, or scary, or insert word here. There's no moving forward with that. It's just you're literally staying in one place. You're not discovering, you're not growing, you're not challenging, you're just being idle. And I don't agree with being idle. I think there's always an opportunity to move forward, right? To go back to what Shaun was saying too about the whole fight, flight, and rest and digest, kind of the parasympathetic and the sympathetic nervous system and stuff like that. One thing I want to add to that was that the body reacts very similar, like the same arousal chemicals and reactions of the body from anxiety and excitement are pretty much identical, right? Increased heart rate, increased blood flow, increased adrenaline drive, right? They're all the same between the two. And what Shaun was saying, I'm going to add to that, was that if you can reprogram your thinking, if you can take that moment to say, hey, I'm anxiety about this, but I can turn this into an excitement, like that professor walking on that stage and now you're all anxiety, why don't you turn that into excitement? It's like, ooh, I get to challenge this professor. I get to ask him questions. And now you're using that body reaction for a positive, but it takes that mental programming to switch it from anxiety to excitement. And I've done that for a number of years, and I've been trying to teach other people about it too as well. And it's a powerful thing when you can go from lockdown, like, oh my goodness, I'm frozen, to let's go, let's take this thing on. It is very strong to see people one day not even able to move to next day running out of fire. It is very powerful indeed.
Absolutely. Shaun, thoughts on this?
Yeah, I agree. There's very little difference between performing well and sucking. And that is understanding the difference between the moment that you start feeling elevated, it's what you do with that elevation. And it doesn't matter whether you're doing a draw or whether you're throwing a frisbee or whether you're doing a whatever. Anything that is performance based, you need to get elevated a little bit to initiate in a way that is notable. Now, if you do it a lot, 10,000, 10,000, 10,000, 100,000, 100,000, now you're a million. Maybe you do something a million times. Well, your state of elevation, in order to be primed, that's a key word, primed, in order to be elevated appropriately, 1 million times into it, it looks, feels, smells, tastes, sounds, experiences differently than that 1,000 times into it. But irrespective of how it feels within you, The fact remains that you've got to be elevated a little bit to be primed. So 1,000 times in, that elevation feels more elevated. 1,000,000 times into it, that elevation feels less, but you're still elevated. You're still, when I'm doing something that matters, and if I have to prime in order to accomplish it, whether it's 1 millisecond in front of me and it's only going to take me 3 seconds to do whatever I'm going to do, or whether it's 10 seconds in front of me and it's going to take me a day and a half to do it, if I need to prime, and by need to, I mean my body just does what it does because it knows what I've got to do. When I need to prime, I let my body prime. I don't think Zen-like about how I'm going to smash on something a millisecond from now. If it's a door kick, I clear my mind, but I don't shut down my body. I let my body do its thing, and my body knows what to do based on a boatload of times that it's done it. And so I don't like consciously think, whoa, I've got to really drop my heart rate right now. My heart rate will do what it needs to do in order to do the thing that I need to be primed for just in front of my nose. So being activated is the word that sometimes it's called. When you activate, it's how you do the next thing after that activation occurs. If you take that activation and turn it into a negative, well, you're going to have a negative outcome. If you use that activation for positive, well, you're going to have a positive outcome. And that is just simply a mindset. Your body will do what it does, but your mind gets to run the machine. Your brain and your body are connected for sure, but it's your mind that runs this hardware. It's your mind that runs this software between the ears. Your mind constructs your reality. Your mind constructs your responses. Your mind runs this whole show. And so you have to get right with the idea that it's what you mindset create that will be the reality in your immediate future. And if you want to believe that every day that you go to work, right around 11:30, the anxiety gets so much that you need to scurry on down to the safe space and chillax for an hour or two, well, that's going to be your reality. But that reality doesn't have to occur if you switch your mindset to, all right, I'm not sure what's bugging me right around 11:30. Is it I've drank too much coffee? Have I been eating too many pastries? Have I not eaten at all? How come I'm so tired? Oh, yeah, that's right. I stayed up until 4 o'clock in the morning watching the latest Netflix show. There's typically a pile of reasons that preceded the moment where you start thinking, why is it at 11:30 I start feeling way off and I need to hit the safe space? So there's lots of things that you can do to get in front of the safe space. And then when you start thinking about the safe space, there's lots of things you can do between your ears to not have to go down to the safe space. Now, I haven't said all of that. I've got to interject once again because I know we're 43 minutes in. That at the start of the show, I said, look, there's outliers. There's people who genuinely need to use a safe space. I say need to, want to, maybe have to, I don't know. But there's outliers that will benefit from a safe space. But it ain't the general population. The general population would benefit from spending a little bit more time on mindset.
100%. I wrote down here, the only safety is in your head. And I think that is kind of what we're getting at in this, is that if you are safe in your own head, then you're safe wherever you are. And I'm not talking physical safety, right? Like, I'm just meaning in terms of anxiety and pressure or whatever it is that is bothering you or causing a response within your body. That to engage in your own head first is the first. That's the first step. You got to start here. Oh, I'm elevated for some reason. Why am I elevated? And then you start working down the path before zipping off. And it's funny. We had a safe space in the regiment. Do you know what it was called? The skiver spot. Because that's what it was. If you wanted to skive, you could disappear off into that one little spot and you could skive off. But it was never called a safe space, but that's basically what it turned into, was that if you needed to disappear for a little while, you could. And I think that it brings up an interesting point in that if you need a minute, or you need to separate from a situation, or if you are physically incapable of handling what's happening right now, you're overwhelmed, or you're having a full out panic attack, you're losing, like all of these things are happening. You're right. It's good to have those moments or those places that you can go to do it. But do you really need a dedicated spot? Like, can you not just step outside and then regulate? Can you not move down the block? Can you not, like, does it require a physical space? Matt, what do you think?
I think the big answer to that solution would be, or that problem is that it's communication, right? It's literally in the situation you're in right now, talking to either about the situation to your colleague, your friend, your work buddy. Hey, this situation's got me on edge. I gotta, what can we do? I need a moment, or, can you help me through this? Or tell him, like, no, this thing is really bad and I gotta dip out of here, right? Communication, I think, is a big aspect. I don't think, to your question, I don't think that a dedicated space is needed per se. Again, we're always keep on going back to the mind, right? Where is my safe space? It's in my mind. It's how I process things. It's how I grow and develop, right? And if I needed to have that quiet moments, yeah, I'll go walk around the block and come back. There we go. There's my safe space, right? I got away from the situation. I got into my mind. I challenged the normal thinking, and I started to realize what my body was going through and why it was reacting to it, what the triggers were, what the responses were, and I've come up with a plan to grow and develop around it again, right? And this may have to happen like several times, because sometimes you don't learn right off the first path, right? Sometimes you got to walk around the block again, rock around, go around, do a couple push-ups, make it go longer. But it's like you're saying, man, the safe space has to be in your head. It has to be in you. It cannot be an external thing. It's not a fluffy couch, Zen garden, perfume infused room. It is literally your mind and you making peace with the chaos that's around you.
100%. Shaun, thoughts?
Yeah, I'll get right to it now. I'm going to throw a freaking Thor's hammer. I think that the safe space is a corporate response to a problem that doesn't exist, except between people's ears, that they're not addressing. And so the corporate response is, well, we've got to check this box, so let's spend a boatload of money and create a dedicated space where someone can go from their office cubicle straight down to the safe space, where they're going to be even warmer and more comfortable. Maybe there'll also be complimentary drinks in there as well. And so at no point does that person ever get told, man, if you're feeling the heat, throw on your winter jacket and go stand outside in the snow for a bit, watch snowflakes. Like, no one's told to walk around the block. No one's told to walk at lunch. No one's told to compress all of the problems into a singular focus and then go work on it, standing out watching snowflakes. What is discussed is, you're uncomfortable. How do we make you more comfortable? How do we turn up the temperature in the room so that you're actually taking off your suit jacket and you can unbutton your tie? The solution is add more comfort rather than address the discomfort. And so it's this corporate response where it's a healing salve. We bought a tractor trailer full of healing salve. Well, you could have saved all of that money just by putting out a newsletter that says, if you're feeling the heat, go stand out in the snow, stare at the sun for a bit, listen to the birds, look at the trees, watch the grass blow. Just get in touch with the moment. feel what's going on outside. And if the birds are too loud, if the birds bug you, well, take your active noise cancellation headphones out there with you and stand outside in nature and watch the trees blow. If you can't listen to them, at least watch them. And so the healing salve, the tractor trailer solution of just keep building more safe spaces, in my opinion, is a corporate response that creates a larger problem. It never lets a person get to work on solutions that they can employ throughout the rest of their daily life. Like what, you leave work where all the safe spaces are, and then you get home and you're in turmoil because you don't have a safe space. You only get to feel safe when you go to work where the safe space room is. I disagree with that. I mean, the safe space is between your ears. And if you're really feeling the heat, go stand out in the cold of nature and chillax and get right with the moment.
Yeah. There's also those times that you can't leave. Like, you just have to be able to sit in that uncomfortable position for a while. And I think back to the first time that I remember I got jacked up. And I don't mean like in basic training where they yell at you and tell you to do stuff, but I screwed up, and I screwed up bad, and I was made to understand that I screwed up bad, and it felt horrible. It really did. And there were people screaming at me, and I knew that I had screwed up. I knew that I couldn't do anything to fix it right now, and it was just a really bad situation to sit in. But I stood there, and I took it, and I just stood there, and it was there. It felt bad, and then as soon as I was able to move forward and engage into whatever the next tasking was. Right. There was a lot of push-ups involved. There was lots of other things happening. Right. But the key is that there's going to be times where you can't just exit the situation, and you're going to have to be able to sit in it. You're going to have to go box breathing. You're going to have to go into the little place in your head and just kind of, okay, I'm here. This sucks. Yep. All right. Now we can move on. Cool. And then just carry on. And I don't know if people get enough practice of this, or they don't have to do it anymore. The Salty hit this kind of nail on the head with this. I want to bring up this comment. He said, I think we've opened up to supporting people's feelings as the foundation of society, as opposed to making people challenge ideals and growth. I think this was the follow-on step from everyone is special and gets a trophy. Now we're allowing emotions and feelings to dictate what right looks like, even if it's not right. I think that's a great comment. Matt, you got any thoughts on this?
People don't like being challenged, and that's the big thing, honestly, I believe. And it kind of what Salty was saying, where it came from everyone has a trophy generation to now everyone is right. Everyone is right. Everyone has an opinion. You will respect me, blah, 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 right? That's not life. That's not what reality is about. You make mistakes. You are wrong. Your decisions, your moments, your actions may have dire consequences. They also may have very good consequences, right? Very rewarding, beneficial, and growing and developing other people, right? But you will never find out if you stand there in one place and say, I'm right, no, and everyone else is wrong around me, right? I won't get into like watching politics or seeing the news and stuff, but you see it when there's people protesting or people bringing up points online and stuff, and they cannot have a conversation or a debate. It's always, I'm right, you're wrong, insert profanity, right? And it's like, why don't we just like chit chat about it, right? Talk about it. Yeah, I believe, I agree with Salty on this one, that it is actually very much the next step in that generational plan.
Yeah. Shaun, thoughts?
Yeah, so Chance, you'd said that, you got jacked up hard and you just had to accept it in the moment. And then you got on with the program. Well, did you get on with the program? You got on with the physical program, but it kind of sounds to me like there's a hint of you're still processing getting jacked up. And so Maybe you're not. Maybe you're not. Maybe you're 100%. You cracked it out of the park. You dealt with all of those momentary demons and you're good to go. Maybe, maybe. But not everyone is. I'll say that. And so you can get jacked up and move through the moment within 3 seconds, but then not deal with what happened, not deal with it in your head, your mindset. And by bringing up that story, if you're bringing it up as 100% positively, cracked it out of the park, worked through all of that, learned all the lessons, did all the things, now you're heroically on your hero's journey because of that moment. Ta-da! Well, maybe, but probably not, because it's rare that anyone works through everything 100% to a degree where it's now a non-factor. Because by bringing up the story, there's still a hint, there's still a little sparkle on that story that is kind of under your skin, a touch, just a touch. Because I've got a boatload of those stories that are still under my skin, just a touch. That I feel like I did a really good job, but it's still a touch. And all those little things under all of those little things under our skin, the 0.03% that's still there. Ugh, if only. The if onlys. Those are the things called experiences that you've kind of like got to chew on and solve. And then, best case, you don't fully solve it. Because then it sticks with you for the rest of your life as a milestone moment or as a marker, not as a red flag, but as a marker that helps shape your life. Because guaranteed, Chance Burles never made that mistake again, nor will he ever again. Whatever the mistake is, it doesn't much matter because it's still under your skin. Just a touch, just a hint. It's like that little wood splinter that you can't dig out. You know it's there. It's kind of irkish, but it's a reminder. And I think that all of these things, all of these problems that everyone faces don't get solved 100%. And those are the things that stick around as lessons. And so the moment that you introduce a safe space, the splinter gets removed in the mind because it's like this. The splinter in our mind, I'm not going to reference any movies, The Matrix. The splinter in our mind is the thing that sort of reminds us of what our mind is, what the path is, what we do in the moment, the little recall moments of, oh yeah, oh that one time, oh that'll never happen again, oh I'm going to do it differently. All of these things are the lessons in life, the experiences in life. But if you duck, dodge, dive, all of the splinters straight to the safe room, you're missing out on the moments that are going to help shape your life in the future.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, and you're probably right that there's something. I always refer to them as like training scars, not training scars, but like scars, because I can feel my scars. And I know where they came from. And every time I look at them, I'm like, oh, yeah, right. I remember what happened there. And you're 100% right that they remind you of the mistake that was made. And then if you can accept the responsibility of the moment, hey, yep, I screwed that up. Definitely not going to happen again. You can then integrate it into your daily life, right? If it's, making my bed wrong or whatever it is, I don't want that to happen again, so I'm going to make sure my bed is right all the friggin' time. That's why we put people under stress in the military constantly, to make sure that it is a remembered skill set and that there are consequences to actions. But I think that we, perhaps in today's society, at least in North America, I see this a lot, we don't take that responsibility. We don't accept that that is our responsibility, not somebody else's, it is ours, to then manage and integrate and develop further. And I think that's to the point of today's conversation, is that it really is, it's all on us. Anytime you externalize a problem, anytime you externalize an issue or externalize a solution, I don't think you're really solving anything. So we are just about at time here. There's lots of really great comments, but I'm not going to touch on them because I think they're awesome in their own right, but we are running out of time. So let's get some final thoughts on anything that we've gone over so far today. Matt? What's still left in the back of your brain there?
Two things. I 100% agree with your scar reference. Scars tell stories. Stories are awesome. Get more scars. Second, I did feel that I came pretty hot on this one. And it's not because I'm trying to blame people or, oh, safe space and that kind of thing. It's because I want to see people grow and develop and be more than what they are. And I think that the safe space mindset is a huge damper on the people growing and moving forward. If they can always take that step back and hide, that's not moving forward. So yeah, if anyone's offended by what I'm saying and taking it hard, it's because I care and I want people to be better.
Bam. I like it. Shaun, final thoughts?
Yeah, I'm in line with Matt. It's not that I'm such a hard ass that I want all safe spaces to be demolished by this afternoon. Though it wouldn't be too bad. I'm in line with outliers. Probably need safe spaces, but that safe space could be called nature. And so throw on a winter jacket and go stare at the snowflakes and enjoy a little bit of chillaxing moment. That's what I would have suggested before the first safe space was built, but it's too late for that. So the Chance, you'd said responsibility, take the responsibility to process these things. Well, the reason that we're in this moment, why we have a boatload of safe spaces, is because people haven't taken responsibility. And so then the word that kind of rhymes with responsibility, it's the next phase when someone doesn't take responsibility. It's called accountability. And so accountability is the key word to me, not responsibility, because that was botched. So be accountable through some external advice, someone stepping into your life and saying, hey, bro, you don't need to saunter down to the safe space. Throw on your active noise cancellation, enter into some box breathing, start twizzling your pencil, and start feeling it in your fingers. I'll be back in 10 minutes. We can talk about it. And so that's called accountability. There's responsibility and there's accountability. If you haven't used enough responsibility, now you need to be held accountable through not a harsh slap, but a moment where you're guided or mentored or advised that there are better ways to do it than scurrying down to the safe space.
100%. When I started this, and I said at the beginning, it's essential to note that the concept of safe spaces can be subjective. Is that I think also accountability is not subjective, but the way in which you're held accountable can be subjective. So there are times where a full-on, straight-up knife hand jacking to your face, that's required. That type of accountability is sometimes required. Sometimes it's jail time. Sometimes that kind of accountability is required. Sometimes, depending on the level of botching your own personal responsibility, then that means the accountability needs to be of the same amount. So sometimes it's a light tap on the head, like, "Hey, man, smarten up." Sometimes it's a conversation. Sometimes it's a stink eye, right? And it's on a spectrum of things. So again, as we said yesterday, it depends on the vibe. It really does on what that accountability is. So continue to learn, continue to build, continue to grow with us every day here on The Collective. We'll see you tomorrow.
Chimo.
Chimo.